The war is ugly.
More than 17,000 civilians killed and injured since 2015.
I would not give up the future of my children and their children so you could sleep better at night. They have to come and talk peace soon.
Year after year, the war in Yemen goes on with no apparent end in sight. But who's really trying to stop it? My guest this week here in Munich is the country's foreign minister, Mohammed al-Hadhrami. Have the many thousands of civilian casualties and the enormous human suffering all been for nothing?
Mohammed al-Hadhrami, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you for having me.
You have much to say about the violence that the Houthis and their human rights violations, the violence they've committed, but you appear to have almost nothing to say about the shocking casualties and bombings by the Saudi-led coalition that's killed many thousands of your civilians. Why is that?
Well, that's not accurate, actually. You know, the war is ugly. I'm not even going to sugarcoat that for you or for anyone. A lot of civilians are dead, yes. This is shocking. I mean, you hear the news and you know, it's a big campaign, but there's a difference between having human shields like the Houthis or some mistakes that happen in every conflict and every campaign, and the Saudi is no difference.
But you know that human rights have been massively violated by coalition forces, but you look the other way, which means that to a certain extent you're complicit in this, aren't you?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by looking the other way. We have this giant, which is an investigation body that has investigated over 170 claims. We know there's some mistakes. We proved that there's some mistakes.
I want to talk about the investigations
I know.
a bit later, but since March 2015, according to Human Rights Watch, the coalition has conducted numerous indiscriminate and disproportionate airstrikes, killing thousands of civilians, hitting civilian structures in violation of the laws of war. But you turn away and you let that happen.
Horrible. Let me put it in record. This is horrible. Killing any civilians in Yemen is horrible. We want to end this war. Killing even one life, let alone a child, which happened even by coalition. Let me finish.
So why go on with indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks?
Okay, it's a big campaign, right? And there's some mistakes, and we know there's some mistakes.
It's a bit more than some mistakes.
Well, look, I think the UN need to investigate more, and we know there's thousands and thousands are killing and dead. If there's an airstrike, a mistake, everybody's reporting upon it, and they should report upon it. We should hear about it. But there's a lot of mistakes at the Houthis, and I'm not here to talk about the Houthis and the coalitions having mistakes. I want to end this war. I'm from Sana'a, I'm from those territories, my family's is there. We're sick of it, and we need to end it. And just blaming now the coalition for all these will not end the war. We need to end it. Yes, we want to stop the killing. Even
okay, I understand that. But why did so many civilians have to die for the sake of saving a chaotic, divided government such as yours, which barely has legitimacy within the country?
Let's talk about legitimacy first. Legitimacy is not popularity. I'm from a different country than the president, but the president is the last elected president. 6.5 million people elected our president in 2012.
For 2 years?
Well, he was...
For 2 years. His mandate ran out a long time ago.
It's not for 2 years. It's until we have a democratic system that allows us to elect a new president. Who's going to tell...
And who decides what a democratic system is then?
Exactly.
Who?
Exactly. The Yemeni people. And who would do that? Those who were elected. Okay. I'm not going to allow you or anyone to tell me you have to choose this leader to get you out of this. We choose a leader, and we need to get out of it. We don't want him to be there for life. That's why we actually had the revolution back in 2011.
Minister, the worst thing about the bombings is that in all these years they have proved absolutely futile. You have won nothing, and the Houthis remain entrenched. So the catastrophic injuries and deaths among the civilian population have been for nothing, haven't they?
It's been a change in the way the coalition has been conducting this war. There's no more campaign to actually target Sana'a and other cities. There have been some talks about the escalations with the Houthis and the Saudis. We're not involved in them, and then it didn't happen because we know we need to end this war. And we need to talk how to end this war. Everything that happens in Yemen is a reaction to the Houthis' actions. We could be in Sana'a in 1 week if they just do the right thing, and the right thing is not hard to do. And why don't we ask that? Why don't we actually answer that question?
More than 17,000 civilians killed and injured since 2015.
The number is
lives
more.
sacrificed for a stalemate proxy war that created the world's largest humanitarian disaster. You really believe your government is worth that horrendous human cost?
I believe our future is worth the fighting, not the
How about
killing.
a future without you? How
Okay.
about a future without
It's
your
fine.
government?
I could resign even today, not tomorrow. You know what? If you know the Houthis, and if you know their ideology, if you know that they want to have this Abd al-Malik al-Houthi as a figure, nobody could elect, buffer zone, and then whatever puppet governments they want. We would not accept that. I would not give up the future of my children and their children so you could sleep better at night. You know, it is my country. My people are dead. They're dying every day. You expect me to just to settle for any peace that would explode in our face any time in the future? No, I'm not going to concede to the Houthis. I'm from their territories. I'm a Zaidi. We don't approve of what they do, and they have to come and talk peace soon. And we have to actually send the right signals to do that. They have these illusions of power that you and others would feed in by just saying the coalition has to go. Well, the coalition will end if we end the war, but not before that. If the coalition ends, Yemen would descend into more chaos. It's not about me, the government, or the president how he stays in power. It's about saving Yemen.
Foreign Minister, you talk about the investigations that have gone on into what you termed euphemistically mistakes. In most cases, you're not going to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice, are you? We know that 3 attacks on civilians several years ago are being referred by investigators for possible prosecution. Just 3 out of countless bombing strikes that have repeatedly hit civilian infrastructure and caused thousands of...
change, and let me put it for the record.
What do you mean should change? It's not changing.
Look, let me put it for the records. Any civilians are dead. Those responsible, whatever they are, they should be held accountable.
They should be, but they won't be, and you know it. Fact is, previous investigations don't encourage optimism,
Well, we do have our investigations, and when we know it, we would do it.
Some, for show. Okay. 3.
Well, that's what you
and it's
say.
taken 3, and it's taken many years to get these
talk about
3
facts,
starting.
Or we could talk about what you think they're the facts. I mean, yes, civilians are dead. This is horrible. We do the investigations, but we need peace. We need peace. I mean, we're talking about having peace, and it's not easy. You know, the thing is...
You want to get away from the subject of investigations because they did not meet international standards, did they? They didn't meet international standards.
And justice, unfortunately, sometimes don't come in hand. We have to have peace, and then we'll have transitional justice afterwards to get all this done.
You're the one who's refusing talks with the Houthis.
Okay, that's what you think. Okay.
That's what you've said.
No.
Your Ministry of Information said it.
No, I represent the foreign policy of Yemen. We need to talk soon. However, I'm not going to let the Houthis get off the hook in Hudaida. We went to Sweden and we signed a deal. They came back 1 year. They haven't done anything to prove it. Should I just let them go off the hook and then move on? No, they have to be responsible for what they signed.
Go on destroying your country piece by piece, child by child, piece of infrastructure by infrastructure.
That is not correct.
And continue with this humanitarian disaster.
Why is it a humanitarian disaster, you think? Okay, Sana'a Airport, let me just jump to that. Why do you think the Houthis are holding it hostage? We opened it in for internal flights. They're refusing because they want to create this siege, this aggression against Yemen to hold on to power, which they don't have. Who gave them the right to speak on behalf of me, on behalf of millions of Yemenis? And they usurp power. And they have this illusion of taking us back before 62.
Minister, you've dug in your heels. The UN is seeking unconditional talks between you and the Houthis. You've dug in your heels and rejected all talks.
I didn't. Who says so?
January the 28th, your Minister of Information said, we categorically reject any talk about negotiations.
Taken out of context. What we said is, I'm willing to go now to peace talk if they're going to talk peace. However, we need to have the right conditions to go. Okay.
The UN wants unconditional talks.
Okay, hold on. I don't want to go for talk peace so they could have a good report for the Security Council. I want to go and talk peace to make sustainable peace for Yemen. And if the Houthis would sign decrees, like what they did in Sweden and come back and not implement, we should actually hold them accountable for implementing. And
so
then we
fine.
go.
Let your people go on dying then because you won't sit down and talk.
No, that is not
and you're setting conditions that are not going to be met and you're ignoring the advice of the United Nations.
This is not conditions. We're just saying they have to implement what they signed. Is that really hard to ask? We cannot just go on by them signing accords and not implementing anything. You know what we did? Back in 2014, we had a peace deal. Just a few days after the coup, 2 days after the coup. It was the Partnership and Peace Agreement. You know what they agreed to? They agreed to partnerships, but the security measures, they never talked about it. Why aren't you talking about that? I mean, it is there. You want me to go
I'm talking
again?
about what you're responsible for. Minister, I understand there are no angels in war, but according to international investigators, your forces have nothing to be proud of. Last year, the UN panel of experts on Yemen accused all sides in the war of committing horrific abuses, from arbitrary killings to rape and torture, with impunity. So not only have you not won this war, you've also lost any claim to the high moral ground, haven't you?
I'm not going to claim we're angels. Nobody is. We just need to end the war. And I can tell you,
it's a long way from being angels. Government-affiliated forces arbitrarily detained, forcibly disappeared scores of people. Do you have no respect for the rule of law?
We do. But sometimes it's really hard to control everything. I can tell you. But it's not systematic killing of the Yemeni people like you want to show it to be. You know, okay, you keep just talking about two sides. Have you been to Yemen? Have you been to Sana'a? Have you been to Aden? Have you been to Hudaydah and Marib? You listen to the people themselves in there. You can't just brush everything as you know, Shia-Sunni divide, as rich countries fighting a poor country. That is not the way to end this war. We know there's some atrocities happened. I mean, we are a few miles from Dresden. We know what history is like.
Why continue to block vital aid, goods and fuel from coming into the country?
This is a good question. We're not actually doing so. What we did is we're trying to block the oil shipments that come from Iran to the Houthis.
So Human Rights Watch have got it wrong, have they, in their latest report?
If they said
the Saudi-led coalition's restriction on imports have worsened the humanitarian situation.
That is not true, and let me tell you why, if you will. You know, what we said is, Hudaydah was open. We were a few kilometers from the port. The humanitarian came and the UN says, you can't do this. We said, fine, let's go to Sweden and we need to change the status quo. 1 year, it's nothing happened. Let me go back to the question. The question says, we are actually holding Hudaydah. So this is not true. We have reports from the UN panel.
I didn't say that.
That you're probably not going to mention, that shipments of Iranian oil coming with counterfeit documents to the Houthis for free. You know, we said by Decree 75, let's just check the papers.
They're saying,
okay, let me just finish. I know, and then I'll hear you. We just said, let's just check the papers. The papers came. The Houthis hold hostage and asked every merchant not to submit the papers so they could get 2 phony shipments. So who's holding that? And then we conceded. We let it go.
All right, Minister, Human Rights Watch is saying the coalition has delayed and diverted fuel tankers, closed critical ports and stopped goods from entering Houthi-controlled seaports.
What is the last thing?
Can I just finish? Fuel needed to power generators to hospitals and pump water to homes has also been blocked. How do you justify preventing power from reaching hospitals?
I'm not justifying preventing anything. In the past 3 months, there have been more fuel than in the previous 3 months. So you check the statistics and we talk again.
More than 2 years ago, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights begged both you and the Houthi rebels to let supplies of food and medicine into the country. All parties to the conflict, said the panel of experts on Yemen, have obstructed the distribution of humanitarian assistance. The High Commissioner begged you and the Houthis to have mercy on the people of Yemen.
You know,
how far has this gone when you're actually being asked to show mercy on your own people?
Let me give you something. You know what I don't like something about the UN is that they call everyone when they know exactly who's making the problem. Let me just give you an example. A few days ago, they had a meeting in Brussels about the atrocities that the Houthis are doing to the humanitarian field. You know, they want to tax your taxpayers' money that comes to Yemen so they could steal it. I'm not justifying
so
whatever.
So the UN's biased against you. Is this what you're saying?
No, it's not.
What
they just want to be in a neutral part. They don't want to say, okay, I am willing to receive any criticism, but don't say all the parties. Tell me what I did wrong and I'll fix it. But you have to point fingers also at the Houthis. Point finger at me and also point fingers at the Houthis. You cannot just...
They have pointed continually fingers at the Houthis.
And I will clear them now. I know what I do. And we are trying, struggling to get it.
As I said to you earlier, government-affiliated forces arbitrarily detained, forcibly disappeared scores of people. And you say mistakes happen in war.
Yeah,
That's it. That's the excuse.
No. I mean, you can't. I mean, give me specifics and we would actually fix them. I'm not saying
you haven't read the report by the UN panel of experts?
Yes. And
there are plenty of specifics in the
report,
dates,
it was
times.
so biased, the very first report.
So it is biased. You're accusing them of being biased.
Okay, we're talking about different...
Everybody who violates human rights accuses they're
Yeah, I
accused
understand. But
of being biased.
let's just be more specific so we can know what we're talking about. We have an expert group, which is the UN panel, according that is actually following the Security Council. The Houthis are not even letting it get to Sana'a. We believe whatever they say, and whatever they say is not biased. We would check. If we have mistakes, we'll do. There's another really experts that come from the Human Rights Council. The first report was so biased, it just took exactly from the propaganda of the Houthis. And we let them know. We said, you can't just have unfactual checks. You have to check them before you report them. And then you can't just say, blame everyone on everything.
Let me give you some facts. 20,100 airstrikes on Yemen by the coalition forces since the war began. An average of 12 attacks a day. These attacks have blown up hospitals, school buses, markets, mosques, farms, bridges, factories and detention centres. Coalition airstrikes, the UN Human Rights Commissioner said in 2017, coalition airstrikes continue to be the leading cause of child casualties as well as overall civilian casualties. So he didn't know what he was talking about either.
No, it's not true. Look, we
the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Mistakes happen, and I told you before, but you have to be very clear.
More than mistakes.
You have to be clear on the report. Now
it's a policy of targeting civilian infrastructure. Are the pilots that incompetent that they can't tell the difference between a market and a Houthi enclave?
If it happens, then we condemn that, and we would continue to do so.
Years later,
but you
lucky,
have to also point out for what the Houthis are doing. We need to make peace. We don't want to continue this war, and we have to do it. A few days ago, they obstructed hospitals. It's not right, but we don't want just to dwell on it. We want to know what is now required to make peace, and I know what is required to make peace. We need to crack the illusions.
Yeah, talking is required to make peace.
No, it is not talking. Okay.
This is going to end at a negotiating table, otherwise it won't end. And the sooner it gets there, the better. And at the moment, you are the ones preventing those talks from taking place.
Including the Houthis, no one needs to be done. We debated it for 100 days in Kuwait. And you know what happened at the end? They changed their mind. You know why? Because they know that they would have a better thing if they don't sign. And unfortunately, the international community, especially some parties, send them the wrong signals that maybe if you just hold on to taking Yemen hostage, you would get a better deal. That's what happened, and that's what we need to crack.
Minister, last year, as well as fighting the Houthi rebels, you became embroiled in another civil war, this time with forces in the south, known as the Southern Transitional Council. So not only are you failing to beat the Houthis, you can't even keep your own side together, can you? It's not a great record,
I can talk about that if you want.
It's not a great record.
No, okay, let me talk about that. It's a big coalition. What happened in the south is another complication that is not welcomed, of course. Unfortunately...
They want to succeed. They're determined to succeed.
Okay.
It's not a complication.
Well, it is... okay. It's really hard to discuss something without really proper digestion of what is actually happening. If the STC, our brothers in the STC really, really represent all Southrons, it would be an easy problem to solve. The STC have a problem with Southrons themselves, not with the STC. The STC is just units outside of the control of the government that have been beefed up by the United Arab Emirates, and then eventually they decided in August to oust the government from our second capital. That cannot happen, and we made it clear to the UN against the United Arab Emirates.
Well, it did happen, and it was only the Saudis that patched together an agreement with you called the Riyadh Agreement. But that's not working either, is it?
Well, it is not working because there's just some intransigence, and we believe the Saudis will be able to fix it. On all sides? No, in the STC sides. And we could prove it. We have the text. We have the metrics that actually explains what we did. But we have to pass that too.
You've given away a lot to get this Riyadh Agreement, haven't you? You've basically given Saudis control over major decisions that your government is taking. You say no. According to the Carnegie Middle East Center, several articles of the Riyadh Agreement emphasize Saudi supervision of this new government. Both they and the UAE will continue to intervene as they wish in your internal affairs. And that was the price for your Riyadh Agreement.
No, that is not completely accurate. The price of the Riyadh Agreement is to get united so we can get back and make peace. You can't just have everything. Perfection is not really a possible way out in Yemen. And it is actually the enemy of good. And that's what we want at the end.
The Sana'a Center for Strategic Studies says that your president, Hadi, and the STC, the Southern Transitional Council, have accepted that all major government actions be coordinated by Saudi Arabia. So basically, you've sold your country to them, haven't you?
That is not true. I am the foreign
You're puppets
minister
of the Saudi government.
That's what you think. I'm the foreign minister of Yemen, and I say what I believe it is for the right to the Yemenis. Not what the Saudis want, not what the Emiratis want, not what anyone wants. And that's proven. Yes, we're in Riyadh, we go back to Arab, but we speak our minds, and it is our responsibility and decisions. We have, in the Riyadh agreement, conceded to have some way in actually dealing with the South. The Saudis now there instead of the Emiratis, and we need peace. We don't want to fight war in the North and war in the South. And we know that the STCs do not represent the whole Southern, and that's an issue too. And they have to know that they cannot just continue being outside the fold of the government. If this government is dissolved, you would have more chaos in Yemen than you would think. It is not as easy as you think it is.
Last year the Saudis actually expelled one of your government advisors, didn't they? Mutaha Enan, because why? He criticised coalition actions in the south of Yemen.
Mutaha Enan is a diplomat with me. He actually came and did something against protocol. It's not because the Saudis didn't do anything.
Him.
They didn't expel him. His term ended, and we did it from the office because he actually violated some of the codes of the diplomatic corps. Now, you can't just politicize everything like this. I don't think it is right. I diverting the whole. Mutahhar Enan, he's a diplomat who actually didn't respect the rules of law.
And can't go back to Saudi Arabia.
Well, why? Well, he could go back to Yemen. He could be anywhere else. He could go back to Saudi Arabia. Why not? But not as a diplomat. It ended.
Talk to me about corruption going on in your state, because it's not enough that there's a huge war and a humanitarian disaster. It seems that the state money is now being siphoned off in corruption scams involving the Central Bank of Yemen. Why is that going on?
Well, the Central Bank, I read the report, which you're referring to. Now
from the UN panel of experts.
Yes, of course. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah, it's talking about it in some paragraphs.
That's right.
It's exactly. I spoke to the Prime Minister about it. We've sacked 2 governors already. Our books are open. Ernst & Young is coming to Aden to actually check the books of the Central Bank. It's open.
The report said the bank hadn't been audited for 6 years.
I asked the Prime Minister after this report, why don't you just let the panel go and check the books? You know what he said? They didn't ask to go and check. Now Ernst & Young are coming to check. If we have some mistakes, if we have some corruption charges, we'll be ready to act upon them. We're transparent. Come and check them. Send any team you want to do so. We need to end this war. We don't want to continue. Yes, there's some corruption. I'm not going to deny it, but we need to end it. And we're willing to crack any cases if you just find them. I mean, just point them at us, and we will do so.
You keep saying you want to end this war.
Yes.
Do you really believe that a single unitary state is going to emerge from the terrible destruction that you and the other combatants have inflicted on
Let me
Yemen?
say something. I think we as Yemenis need to know what's the difference between a means to approve something and the goal.
I'm talking about the massive divisions in your country.
I'm going to get to that. So the goal is to raise up the standards of living of the Yemeni people. Unfortunately, some camps would actually create the means, which is unity, central government, this, as actually their goal, which is wrong, So we gave the central government a go. It didn't work. In the national dialogue, everyone, including the Houthis, the Southrons, decided on a federal system. Let's just give it a chance. Let's just give this federal system a chance.
The South wants to secede.
Not all of it.
Quite a lot of it.
No.
Quite a lot of movements.
Who said so? The central...
The longer the war's gone on, the greater the divisions in your country.
Sana Center that you actually quoted had actually some poll in the South. And not all of them, more than 50%, even 60%, want to stay in some form of federal government. Not everyone in the South wants to secede, and even if they want...
you had a civil war within a civil war. That's quite an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a civil war within a civil war. There were so few skirmishes back in the South, and it's over now.
Skirmishes? They kicked you out of Aden.
Yes. We went
That's more than a skirmish, isn't it?
Yes, but now
That's more than a skirmish.
Who is in Aden now? Our Prime Minister just came from Aden yesterday, and he's going back now. I mean, it's not like the whole South is turning against the government. You check the South. Shabwa, Abiyan, Dala', Lahij. I mean, it is not the case. The STC need to know that they have to cooperate to be part of this government. They don't have the backing of all the Southrons. Those in the South oppose them more than those in the North.
You say they need to know they have to cooperate. They are dead set on one aim only, and that is secession.
Who said so?
They did.
No, that is not correct. Ask Adirus. Ask the others who signed the Riyadh Agreement. I mean, it is not correct. They want to stay, and they said so. The southern issue for them, not what we say, would come after we finish the war with the Houthis, and then we can discuss it. That's what they say. So, yeah, check the facts.
And peace in Yemen, ever?
It would come, and we want it to come. But we're not just going to have any peace with the Houthis. You know, I'm not going to give the future of Yemen to those who believe that they could just, you know, take Yemen and have this divine right to rule us like what they do in Iran. We're not going to accept that. The Houthis need to know that they could share power, but they're not going to do it with the guns facing and, you know, pointing in our face.
Mohammed Abdullah Al-Hadhrami, thanks very much for being on
Well, thank you very much for this very good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.